All right, so hello everyone. Again, welcome, and thank you for joining us today on getting to know the federal hiring process and your non-competitive eligibility benefit. I'm Calvin Landrum, a training coordinator here with the Corporation for National Community Service in Washington, D.C., and I'll be the host for today's webinar. I'll also be facilitating the live Q&A at the end of the session and taking your questions throughout. Also joining us today are Jessica and Indy from our partners at Education Northwest, who have helped to prepare today's webinar and will be managing the WebEx technology. You'll probably see them in the chat and the Q&A to help you address any questions that you may have. So if you see Jessica Knight or Indy Clark, you'll see them in there and they can help you out. Now, before we get started, we're going to do something that's one of my favorite things, and I want to get a sense of who's on the session today. So if you've seen this before, you know exactly what to do, and if you haven't, in the upper left corner of the screen is an icon that looks like a pencil. If you click on that tool, the annotation tools on the left side will pop up on your screen. Click the arrow tool, and then click on the map to point to where you're serving as a VISTA. And you may want to make this slide full screen, and you can do that by clicking on the double arrows in the top right of the screen, just so you can more easily see. It looks like we have a ton of people on this webinar today. We're up to about 450 folks, representing what I'm going to assume is every state in the United States. I don't know that I see anyone from, I think, South Carolina yet, but I'm sure they're on. We've got tons of folks from the Northeast. Really wonderful. Really, really good stuff. Tevin Williams is out there hanging out off the map. We've even got some folks from Hawaii and Alaska, some people out in the, I don't know, in the ocean by Florida. Raymond says he's here down in Puerto Rico. Wonderful. Welcome, Raymond. I'm glad you were able to join us today. Wonderful. Man, there's a ton of people here. This is really exciting. A little intimidating. Very, very exciting. So as you can see, you know, we're being joined today by your fellow VISTAs from all over the United States. Cool, wonderful. Well, thanks everyone. I'm really excited to be speaking with all of you today. Oh, and by the way, if you switch your slide to a full screen, you may want to switch back so that you can participate in the activities that are coming up. I see that we have someone from Houston, Texas. I'm also from Texas, so, you know, represent from Waco, Texas. Texas is my favorite place. That aside, I'd like to welcome our main speaker today. Today we have with us Liz Matthews, VISTA Alumni and Employer Team Lead. Liz has been with CNCS for almost 8 years and served as a VISTA in Lake Charles, Louisiana at a women's shelter in the mid-90s. So hello, Liz. Thanks for joining us today.
Hello, Calvin, and hello to everybody. It's so fun to see you all on the map, and Puerto Rico and Hawaii and Alaska included. So shout out to everybody, and I'm really excited that you've taken time out of your day to be on this call.
Yeah, can you believe it? They all tuned in to listen to us yap for about
I know. How about that?
I hope it's worth it.
We'll make it worth it.
We'll definitely make it worth it. And speaking of making it worth it, during today's session, we're going to be defining non-competitive eligibility. We're going to talk about the process for searching and applying for positions. We're going to provide some tips for creating a federal resume, and talk about how you can highlight your VISTA service and your non-competitive eligibility in your application. And you'll often probably hear us use the acronym NCE. Just know that when we say NCE, we're talking about your non-competitive eligibility. So what is that? What is non-competitive eligibility? So essentially what it is a benefit of your VISTA service, and it's also a benefit offered to returned Peace Corps volunteers that gives you a leg up when you're applying for positions in the federal government. Your VISTA service permits you to compete in a smaller pool of applicants, potentially improving your chances of success. So that's sort of like the overall background, but I'm going to turn it over to Liz, who's going to dig in a little bit deeper.
Great. Thank you, Calvin. All right. So it's really important for you all to understand the value of this benefit and how to take advantage of it. So non-competitive eligibility, or NCE, is a federal hiring appointment granted to VISTA members for 1 year upon successful completion of your VISTA service. Key word there, successful completion. You have to finish in order for you to get this benefit. So having current NCE eligibility status does not mean that you are entitled to federal employment, but non-competitive eligibility permits, and again does not require, a federal agency to hire a VISTA who meets the minimum qualifications for the position. So you have to be qualified. So for example, if a federal hiring manager met you at a career fair and they were very impressed with your skills and experience, you could give them your resume and they could hire you without looking at any other resumes, as long as you meet the minimum requirements. And this is what we like to call the AmeriCorps VISTA advantage. Of all the national service programs, only VISTAs receive the special hiring appointment. And returned Peace Corps volunteers also receive this benefit. And I think somebody in the chat said they're from Brazil, so shout out to our friends in Brazil. I think we've got some Peace Corps folks on the phone as well, so welcome. All right, so this really is a significant advantage. It allows VISTAs to compete for positions that are not always available to the general public. Likewise, it's a faster hiring process. So once clearing a federal hiring requirement on the federal end, managers can make an offer to a candidate that meets these minimum qualifications. So as you can imagine, this is highly desired by hiring managers. This is such a simple process, in fact, that many federal hiring managers don't believe it or realize that they can bring new employees on this way. So we're doing what we can on our end to inform hiring managers and HR specialists throughout the federal government that AmeriCorps VISTA members make great job candidates and they have non-competitive eligibility that they can use to bring you on board. Okay. So we do want to highlight that upon completion of service, NCE lasts for 12 months, but it can be extended for an additional 2 years for a grand total of 3 years from the end of service date. Now, before we go any further, you'll see a note at the bottom of this slide, and I really want to make this point. I want to make sure that it's clear that it is the hiring agency, not the VISTA alum or the Corporation for National and Community Service, that enables the extension. There's no place where you submit your case for extension. There's no office that administers NCE. There's no wizard behind the curtain. This really is the hiring agency in which you're applying to. It's really up to that manager, and you can present your case for extension if that's what you want to do. So there are 3 reasons for extension, and those are, 1, if after serving you decide to go into the military; 2, if you become a full-time student at a recognized institution of higher learning; and thirdly, if you engage in another activity that the hiring agency thinks warrants an extension. So an example of that could be interning at a nonprofit. It could even be volunteering, so you could even not be getting paid, or it could be actual employment at an organization. But the bottom line is that it's providing you with skills and experiences that are making you an even stronger candidate for that job. All right, so let's clarify a few more common questions about NCE. We often hear, I'm serving for 2 years. Does that mean I get 2 years of eligibility? No. No matter how long you serve as a VISTA or Peace Corps, you only get the 1 year of eligibility, or it can be extended for the various reasons that I just listed. All right, I've served several part-time VISTA terms that add up to a full year. Can I get NCE? Feel free to try and answer in the chat if you want. No. You need to serve a full-time, year-long VISTA assignment to receive NCE. So if you've done summer associate terms, sorry to say, you have to do the full term in order to get this benefit. All right. So we're going to do a little fun exercise here. Calvin, do you want to give them instructions on this?
Yeah, totally. So like you did with the map activity, we're going to use your annotation tools. So our first question is, when does your NCE status start? I know we just covered this, but I want to see, you know, if everyone's paying attention, see if they've got the right answer.
Ah, so smart.
I see a ton of people saying as soon as you complete service. Someone says as soon as you start service. So the correct answer to that question is, Liz?
As soon as you complete service. So it's literally the day after your term of service ends.
Wonderful. All right, so next question. How long do you have NCE status? 1 year, 7 years, forever? What do people say? This is 1 year. We've got some forevers. I see Rio.
Okay, I like how Rio's backing it up. That's good.
Yeah, Manny in California, so 7 years. Liz, what's our answer?
Is 1 year. Now, this is a slight tricky question because we did talk about the fact that it can be extended for up to 3 years, but you have to have been doing any of those 3 activities that I discussed.
Wonderful. All right, so our next and last question is, does NCE status guarantee a federal job? Let's see, what do y'all say? We got yes, no, or not sure.
All right.
And Portia, I see your comment in there, having trouble answering, how can I participate? If you want to type your answer in the chat, we can see it there too. So let's see, a lot of people say no, Elizabeth Bird says yes. Liz, what do you think? What's the answer?
The answer is no. It definitely gives you a leg up, but it does not guarantee you a position. Yeah. All right, that was fun. All right, so moving along, how do I search and apply for positions using NCE? So now that you understand this great benefit, how do you actually get to use it? All right, as with most things, a lot of it boils down to networking. So you need to meet people who work in the federal government. So go to hiring fairs when you can. Our friends at Peace Corps have invited VISTA members and alums to attend their career fairs this year, and the next one is taking place in Washington, D.C. on March 29th. So we will make sure to post a link to that in the chat room at the end, and this is a great opportunity. It's also on national service. Oh, there we go. Thank you, Mindy. So please sign up. That's going to be a great opportunity for all. And you can also look for opportunities in your area on Meetup. GovLoop is a great resource that has many virtual opportunities, as does GoGovernment. So I highly encourage you, not only do they have virtual opportunities, but they also are full of information and trainings about how to get hired into the federal government. So we'll share those links at the end of the session. Secondly, you can search for positions requesting candidates with NCE a couple of different ways. So you can actually do a search and save a search on USAJOBS, which I'll show you in a little bit. Hopefully, many of you know that there is a Vista Campus job board, and on that you can also click a box that says non-competitive eligibility. And then CareerLink, which is run by Peace Corps, also you can look for positions that are looking for folks with NCE. Now, I'm also going to add that sometimes you will find positions on the Vista Campus job board and on CareerLink that are not on USAJOBS, and the federal hiring managers can do that because of this NCE status. So many of them do go ahead and post on USAJOBS because they can hire both folks with NCE and without, but a lot of times, and that's why the networking really comes into play, is that you may find out about a position that's available that is not on USAJOBS. Finally, market yourself. Don't assume that every hiring manager knows what NCE is. As I stated before, no one governs NCE or the process, so it is really up to you to advocate. So put language in your resume, your cover letter, and your LinkedIn profile that states that you have NCE. And likewise, if you get to the interview stage or you're at a career fair meeting with potential federal employers, just let them know that you have this NCE status, or if you're still currently serving, let them know the date in which your NCE will begin. All right, you will also need to access your verification of VISTA service letter. So when you're currently serving, you just have a currently serving letter. But once you close service, this will become available to you. And it's a very important document because it proves your NCE status and contains the language that HR specialists understand that explains NCE. And it also lists your dates of service. So you're really going to want to make sure you have that letter, and if you have any difficulties downloading it from your account on myAmericorps.gov, just contact the VMSU. Okay. So you may be wondering timing. It is never too soon to start researching and networking. The more that you know about what agencies are out there and what managers are looking for, the better you can work on gaining that experience as well as zeroing in on your search process. So knowing what people are looking for will allow you to think about and see how your current experience translates or supports what people are looking for. So we recommend applying about 3 to 4 months before your service ends. And as I stated, just let the hiring manager know that you will have NCE as of whatever date. But keep in mind, do not exit service early, as you will then not receive your NCE status. All right, so we wanted to just help you start to familiarize yourself with federal agencies and the language that comes around federal hiring. So here are just a few examples of federal departments, and some of them you would have heard of, obviously Department of Education, USDA, Department of the Interior. But as you break it down, for example, at the Department of the Interior, there are 13 bureaus, some of which you would have heard of, like the National Park Service. But others you may not have, but they may post some interesting positions. So, for example, the Office of Surface Mining Reclamation and Enforcement, which my guess is most of you have not heard of, they actually have vistas serving within this agency, and as a result, their HR specialists and hiring managers are familiar with national service. And in fact, many VISTA alums have been hired there as a result. You can also run searches for best places to work in the federal government by small or large agencies. So OPIC, the Overseas Private Investment Corporation, reached out to me the other day wanting to receive notices about our career fairs. They help American businesses invest in emerging markets. So if you've been focused on economic development, there could be opportunities that will be a good fit for you at OPIC. Obviously, that would be a nice fit for Peace Corps folks as well. So don't rule out an agency just because you haven't heard of it. Instead, do your research. Of course, you've heard of at NASA, and hopefully you all know CNCS, and we actually do have a couple of positions open right now. So we're also going to be putting in the chat room a couple of opportunities. There's National Background Investigations Bureau, loves to hire folks with NCE, so they've got an opportunity coming up, numerous opportunities actually around the country, and then we also have some positions open at CNCS, and you can see in the chat room there's more information if you want to pursue any of those opportunities. Okay. So we wanted to also continue to break this down to familiarize yourselves with this language. So we've got here are sample departments that often exist within federal agencies. So perhaps your VISTA service has you focused in one of these areas like communications. If you've been focused on helping your sponsor use social media to further its mission, you could springboard into a communications or marketing position within a federal agency. We've also listed specific position titles that may be appropriate for you. So data analyst, outreach specialist, program officer, maybe even training coordinator like Calvin. So just know that your experience as a VISTA can really translate well to federal service. I did notice there was a comment in the chat early on saying that this person didn't think they had the necessary experience to work at the federal government. So I would challenge that. I think you probably have more experience than you realize, and everybody has to start somewhere. So just look for these types of departments and position titles that fit with your experience.
Cool, thanks, Liz. So before we move on, I want to take a second to address some of the questions that we have in the Q&A that are related to what we have been talking about so far.
Great.
So we have like a sort of a two-part question here from Emma. She says, this sounds kind of unfair to people who haven't been in AmeriCorps, especially with a minimum qualification experience. The second part of her question is, someone might be more qualified, but they're not included in the same candidate pool, if I understand correctly. So if you don't mind, Liz, I'd like to just kind of explain the sort of hiring structure, I guess, for federal jobs. So when a job is posted on USAJOBS, it's open to the public generally, and everyone applies to that position. Typically, the person who is actually responsible for the hiring isn't looking at all of those candidates. Anyone who applies to that listing, all of their information is going to go to a hiring manager or someone to kind of screen out all those people. So if 200 people apply, all 200 of those applications are going to go to the person responsible for screening them out. Once that person screens them out, maybe they'll send maybe they send the top 20 people over to the person actually responsible for the hiring. So what your NCE does is that it gets you into that group of 20 people. It lets you skip that kind of general application pool and go straight into the hands of the person actually doing the hiring, so that you can get like some like face time, and it just really increases your opportunities and your chances for getting a position. Again, it doesn't guarantee you a position, but it does kind of let you skip that preliminary part. So it sounds kind of unfair. I don't think it's unfair. You've done a year of service, you've worked really hard, or you've done 2 years of service as a Peace Corps member. You're just kind of getting a benefit that you've worked for and that you've earned, and that is a benefit of your service. So let's see. So thank you for that question, Emma. Let's see. Where are we at? Jenna says, does the agency have to approve the select activities in advance, or could you pursue these activities and then, if the agency agreed they were valuable towards your career, approve the extension? I don't know that I understand that question.
I'm not sure either. You have to have already done the activity. I don't think you can go to an agency ahead of time. I mean, I suppose you could, but and say, hey, if I go and do this, can you extend my NCE? It's more of you've already had this experience on your resume, and you can prove that, based on the qualifications for the job, what you've been doing makes you a strong candidate.
Yeah, definitely. So Angela says, are you issued an SF50? I saw a little bit of comment and a few people asking the question. Do you want to explain about an SF50, what it is?
Sure. So that is something that anybody who becomes a federal employee, you get an SF50, and it basically has your record on it. Like if you were a veteran, that would be on there. I wish that they would make it a procedure that your NCE would be included on there. Unfortunately, that's not what happens. So the SF50 is not in play here, and that's why the verification of service letter, and Peace Corps has its equivalent, is an important document to have.
Yeah. So another question that we got, it was sort of around extensions, and I want to be very clear to folks that that CNCS and AmeriCorps does not grant you extensions on your NCE. Again, as Liz said, the NCE benefit is not really managed by one entity, so there's no like central database of everyone that has NCE. So if you are seeking an extension to your NCE, it's going to be up to the person hiring you to give you that extension. So what that means is that if you are in a PhD program, which is 5 years, and if you're asking if that counts as an extension, that'd be up to the hiring manager to say, that 5 years, in that program was making you a better employee, it was making you a more valuable asset to our agency. So yeah, we'd consider that, as a reason for extension. But again, it's really on you, the member, to make that case for yourself and really advocate and say, these are the activities that I was doing while I wasn't having a federal job or having a career. this is what I was doing, to make myself a better employee. Would you consider my NCE? That's really, it's really, really incumbent on you, the member, to advocate for that extension. And then I think there was one more question / clarification that, Liz, I think you can handle, or that you can take. Of course you can handle it. Sorry, you're so smart. You know all this information. So if a member does 2 years of service, back to back, does their NCE start after their second year of service is over, or is it after the first year and then
yeah.
they get another one?
It's after the second year.
All right, so it's after their full term of after their full term of service.
Mm-hmm.
All right, wonderful. All right, so guys, just a reminder, please keep your questions coming, put them into the Q&A panel so that we can keep track of them. And at the end of this presentation, we're going to go through and hopefully get to answer anything that we don't cover. So that being said, Liz, I'm going to let you take it back away.
All right. Can everybody see my screen with USAJOBS up?
So far, I just see the slide that says USAJOBS. We don't see your screen just yet. Or I don't. Oh, other people say that they do see it. Oh, I can't see your screen at all, so maybe I'm behind.
Okay. Well, hopefully, if folks can see it, then I will go ahead and start. So you should be seeing the homepage of USAJOBS. If for some reason that's not working for you, you literally can just go to USAJOBS on your browser and follow along as well.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of no's. I think only I can see the slide also. I don't know.
Okay. Hold on. Let me share my screen. Okay, how's that?
There we go. Now
it helps to push the share button. Yeah, it sure does. All right, just making sure you guys are awake. Okay, so we're going to shift gears here. I'm going to walk you through what to pay attention to within USAJOBS. This can be a little bit intimidating, but the site has improved dramatically over the years, and it is much easier to navigate, and I'm going to show you some tricks here. The first thing that I love to do is to scroll down. We'll come back up to the top in a minute, but see this in the middle. It says Explore Hiring Paths. So the federal government offers unique hiring paths to help bring on individuals that represent our diverse society. So you see veterans, individuals with a disability, and then boom, Peace Corps Vista alumni. Check that out on the homepage of USAJOBS. Pretty sweet. So I'm just going to click on this, and this takes you to a page that explains it. So if you're ever interacting with a federal hiring manager or HR person that has no idea what you're talking about, you can send them to this site, and hopefully that will back you up nicely. Okay, so I just want to point that out. And then at the very bottom, they include events that are coming up. There are two you can see coming up, one on interviewing and one on writing your federal resume. I highly, highly, highly recommend participating in these trainings. They are excellent. They give you real techniques to apply and give it your best shot, and they're offered throughout the year virtually. So no matter where you are, you should be able to participate in those, and they really are great. There's great content there. So we're going to go back up to the top, and I'm going to walk you through this tab here. We're going to talk about saving your favorite searches and jobs. I'm going to show you how to upload your resume and other documents, show you how to make your resume searchable, and apply for jobs in the federal government. And I'm also going to walk you through an actual job announcement so that you know what is important to look at. Okay, so I've already got myself logged in here. So the first thing you're going to want to do is to create a profile. So the profile is where you put all your personal information, so I'm not going to click on that tab. And then there is a tab on Documents. So here you will upload your verification of VISTA service letter that you will have access to at completion of service. And this is also where you can build and upload resumes. So I highly recommend using the resume builder. This will ensure that you do not leave off any pertinent information that is important for a federal resume, but that we might not be used to including in a traditional resume. So for example, each job needs to include the number of hours per week that you've worked, and when inserting dates, you have to include the month and the year, not just the year, because they could take that if you put, December 2015, if you just put 2015, 2016, they're going to assume that it's only 1 month. So you really need to make sure that you give yourself credit for the entire time. And if you don't include this type of information, you can be eliminated immediately. And it would be silly to be eliminated if you're a strong candidate over something that's just a simple oversight. So it's smart to build a master resume as well, and then you can tailor it for each job that you're applying to. And you can make that master resume searchable, and unlike a traditional resume, it's totally fine if your resume is several pages long. So this is where you just click the searchable button. I'm not going to keep that clicked, but this is where you do that work. So before you are applying for a position, obviously you want to make sure that you have your resume ready to go. Okay, so now we're going to go back to the home of our profile, and I want to show you these 3 tabs across the top. So first of all, I'm going to go over to the right to saved searches. So I've saved some searches in here for AmeriCorps Vista, for NCE, and for CNCS. Now, one reason to do AmeriCorps Vista, it's not necessarily to get jobs in AmeriCorps Vista, even though those would pop up, but rather it therefore includes positions that have included language in who they're looking for that is open to people who have served with AmeriCorps Vista. So as you scroll down, you can see that, here it is. Experience refers to paid and unpaid service, including volunteer work done through National Service Programs, Peace Corps, AmeriCorps. So the fact that they've included that paragraph when they set up this job announcement indicates to me that they are familiar with national service, and you may have a better chance of your resume being paid attention to. So I just wanted to point that out. Okay, so you can do your saved searches there. And then you can also search if you know you want to work in California. You can do a search by location. If you know you want to make a certain amount of money, you can search by salary. So you can use the search criteria depending on what you are interested in. So I've saved a couple of jobs here. Look at that, lo and behold, they're here at CNCS. So I thought we would take a deeper dive into one of these job announcements. And again, I'm trying to point out the things that you want to pay attention to when you are doing your research and looking for positions that might be appropriate for you. So first, at the top, all position announcements have an overview. So this gives you the basic information. So you want to pay attention, obviously, to the opening and closing dates. So you are still in the window here if this position actually is of interest to you. You also want to pay attention if you are applying for this on the deadline date. So if it's on February 22nd, you're cranking and trying to get this in, just keep in mind, those of you in Central or Pacific time, make sure you're submitting the application before midnight Eastern time. That's really important. Then you've got pay scale and grade. So I'm not going to dive too deep into this. It gets a little complicated. The best thing to do is to Google these terms, and it will explain in more detail what level the position is. Appointment type is a permanent, it tells you whether the position is permanent or term. In this case, it's 2 years. Now, don't rule this out. Just don't think, oh, I need a job for more than 2 years. It's a good opportunity, and once you're in the federal government, it's much easier to apply for other jobs at other federal agencies. Salary, be realistic. This seems like a pretty decent jump for those of you serving now. This is a nice starter salary. So this should be a realistic if you're just exiting service, as opposed to the ones that are, you know, 100 grand plus, as much, you know, as nice as that would be. And then the work schedule, this is full-time, so if it was part-time, it would say that. Okay, location, this is in Nashville, Tennessee, great city, so just make sure that the location is where you want to be. Most places do not offer relocation expenses or reimbursement. Duties, so this really is the summary about the agency and the particular department within the agency. And here you get into responsibilities, so you're really going to want to pay attention to this part because this is what you would be doing in the job. And if you have done these types of things and if you're interested in doing this type of work, then keep moving forward. If you have no experience whatsoever doing any of this and this is not of interest to you, then it's a good sign that keep on looking. Gives you a sense of whether travel is required, whether you would be supervising people. This box here, who may apply, that is also very important to pay attention to. So you must have this criteria in order to apply. Requirements, these are also very important. So a person reviews your resume to make sure that you really are qualified based on these requirements and qualifications. And there's that language again. Education, the only thing I'll say about that is in talking to our HR person, one of our HR folks here at CNCS, she said, you make sure that you submit a legible transcript. You'd be surprised how many people submit things that really aren't legible. So sometimes it doesn't have to be original, but you need to make sure that the hiring manager can read what you've submitted. How you will be evaluated, this is very important. You want to make sure that you have these qualifications, and in this particular instance, they are asking for narratives. Required documents, you want to make sure that you pay attention to this and submit everything that they are asking for. Finally, if you've read through all of this and you say, yes, this is great, this is a perfect opportunity for me, I want to apply, then you want to make sure you read how to apply. And in this case, there's actually a questionnaire. That's not always the situation, but in this particular position, there is a questionnaire. Make sure when you fill out those questionnaires, you are answering all of the questions. Do not be intimidated by any of them. Be honest with them and answer every single question. And there's the agency contact. If you know, they've obviously posted it. If you would ever want to make sure that your information came through correctly, there's a contact there to get in touch with. But it doesn't. You don't need to try and be best friends with Marcia. She's pretty busy, so that's not a networking thing. That is more of a technical. If you have difficulties. All right, so there's more here, but those really are the most important pieces to pay attention to. And then one final tip that I will leave you with, I recommend copying and pasting the qualifications and how you will be evaluated, so the questionnaire, and making sure that you understand thoroughly what is being asked of you, and you literally can cut and paste that information into a Word document along with your resume and make sure that the things that you have done match up with the qualifications that they are asking for. So I'm going to go back up here, and that may be a lot to take in, but I think the more that you explore around USAJOBS, you'll get a feel for how it works, and it really is much more user-friendly than it ever has been. So when you're ready to apply, you would click the Apply button, and away you go. I'm going to pause there and turn it to you, Calvin.
Yeah, thank you so much for that wonderful overview. Let's take a couple questions just around USAJOBS that we got in the chat, so we can make sure that we're addressing everyone's needs here. There were a lot of questions just around GS scales and pay bands and things, and myself and Allegra, we just posted in the chat the link to the USAJOBS, their like series and pay grade document sort of explaining that. So I would take a look at that and sort of read through it. It kind of tells you, what you qualify based on experience, based on your education, all that stuff. So take a look at that, and that should help you answer some questions. If you have more questions that are very specific about the GS scale, I would recommend reaching out to USAJOBS help line and asking them about that. Now, there are agencies that use different pay scales. So, for example, at CNCS, we're not on the GS scale. We're on the NY scale. So we have NY 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a couple other ones for our senior leadership. Sometimes they don't translate exactly over to the GS scale. So really the only way to know how that translates is by taking a look at the requirements and comparing them to say, oh, an NY2, the requirements for this job sound like they're about a GS7 maybe, and that's sort of how you're going to get that sort of roundabout kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
Someone, let's see, Jen Godfrey says, can you go into what kind of creative opportunities exist within the federal government when you get to a section relevant to that? And I think this is a good time to talk about that. So there are a ton of opportunities in the government, for creative types. I know, for example, Liz works with one. Liz, you can talk about what Matt does.
Sure. So, multimedia specialist is a title that you are going to want to do a search for. These are folks who have experience in graphic design, in email marketing, in putting together graphics for social media, anything that it could also be taking data and making graphics out of the data in order to visualize that information. So especially these days, that is a great need. And if you have that skill and talent, that is very coveted, and there are probably numerous positions available to you.
Yeah. Yeah, there's people, who do graphic design, right? Just photographers, video editors, so many things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Someone says, how do you make sure your resume is searchable on the USAJOBS website? There is, and Liz, we can still see your screen. So if you
yeah, I can go back to that. So you're going to go to your document once you've got your profile set up. You have to have a profile before you can do any of this. It's in the document section. So literally, I've got 2 resumes in here. One is my master, and one it was for a specific job that I applied to. And there's just this little button right there, searchable.
There you go.
That's all you do.
Very, very easy. Let's see. Some folks say, can you show the Save Search settings you use for AmeriCorps Vista? So I think I think that one's pretty easy too. You just go to Search, AmeriCorps Vista, and then there's a button that says
Yeah, so we can actually do if you just search for anything. So multimedia specialist, even popped up there. Let's see what that brings up. Here's something, Department of Defense. So you can click right here to save this search, and you can just say, call it whatever you want to, and then you just save it, and you can let them know how often you want to be notified about those jobs. Click Save, and then the next time you go back to your profile under Saved Searches, it'll be there.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right, so let's see. Someone had a good question. They said, what is how do I, if I only have 1.5 years of experience and it asks for 2 years, how important is that?
Sure, that's a good point. So I wouldn't not apply. I would include your any volunteer work that you have done and count that as experience, and that might beef up the amount of time and your overall resume as well. So that, especially in our universe, we know how valuable volunteer work is, but if you're trying to get more experience in something, or you're just a little bit shy of something in that, like in that case, don't forget to count your volunteer service.
Yeah. Madison says, in the eligibility section of your USAJOBS profile, there's a section on federal employment. Should current VISTAs answer, I am not and have never been a federal employee, or I am currently a federal civilian employee? We should make it very, very clear that US VISTAs are not considered federal employees for like any reason. That's why you don't get an SF-50 whenever you are doing applications on USAJOBS. You want to make sure that you say that you are not and have no, well, that you are not a federal employee. Maybe you have been before, but if you have not like explicitly been a federal employee, I've only been a VISTA, you are not considered a federal employee. And if you click yes to that and it's not supported by your resume, they'll overlook you and that could ding you. There are like extreme cases where they're like, oh, this person is like actually lying, and you can like be banned from federal hiring. So please like make sure that if you have been a VISTA, that does not qualify as federal employment.
Mm-hmm.
Someone says, I know artistic jobs were just discussed. What about music and other art forms? I would say in that keywords on USAJOBS, you can search for music. You can search for anything that you're looking for and see what pops up.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Someone says, can you submit a digital college diploma over a transcript?
They will say specifically if they want an original transcript or whether a copy of a transcript is fine. Usually a diploma, I've never seen them ask for a diploma. You can get in touch with your university. They're used to those requests. They all have a system for fulfilling those types of requests.
Yeah. All right, and then I'll do one more question here. Someone says, do I need to be a citizen to apply for a federal job?
So that is a good question, and they will show you. Let me go back to this. Over here, this job is open to, and it will tell you the criteria. Now, there are some jobs that list, you can see even more criteria. Hold on just a second. I saw one earlier that, let's see if I can pull it up really quickly. Of course, it's not coming. Oh, here we go. These are all the hiring paths right there. So that will, all of those, different jobs will require different things or be asking for different things and have these boxes checked. But that one is very important, and it will list in that box that I had just mentioned. See, it says jobs open to U.S. citizens, nationals, or individuals who owe allegiance to the U.S.
Rad. All right, well, thank you. So we're going to move on. I know there's a lot of questions that are still unanswered, but hopefully we can answer them coming up. I know for sure that we're going to touch on some of them in the next few minutes. So just bear with us, and I promise you we'll try to make it through all of your questions. I'm glad you all are like engaged and really interested and care about this. This is really exciting. All right, so. We're going to take a second to talk about marketing your NCE eligibility. I know that there was a few people in the chat and the Q&A who said, hey, I'm not quite done with my service yet. What do I do about that? How do I say that I have NCE if I haven't actually, earned it yet? So again, I want to be sure that we're clear. The NCE is not managed, again, by one central entity, and you have to let employers know that you're eligible. They don't just automatically know. It's not like something where they look up your social and it's like, oh, this person has NCE. It's not quite how that works. And some great places, to let them know is on LinkedIn, on your resume, and a cover letter, or when you're in contact with a hiring manager. So let's talk about your resume for a second. So as you can see on the slide that is about to come up, if it's not up already, if you can't see it yet. All right, there it is. As you can see, this person was an AmeriCorps Vista in North Dakota, and you can see here that on their resume they put non-competitive eligibility status gained as a result of 2013 to 2014 Vista service, expires 4/7/15. It's really great that She put, the years of their service, their terms of service. They put the expiration date for their NCE, and put along with that their hours per week. So you can see there are like full, there's like a full example of their NCE on their resume. Another example of a place where you can put this is in your cover letter. Someone did ask, if it says that cover letter is optional, should we put one or not? My answer is to always do it if it's a job that you're very serious about. Always do the cover letter because that just kind of gives you a leg up. I mean, think about it. If there's one person, if it comes down to 2 people, one has a cover letter that clearly demonstrates why they're a good fit for that position, and the other person just has a resume, and you have to make all these inferences. I mean, I would probably pick the person with the cover letter who has already connected the dots for me. So if you are very serious about that position, go for it. I'll tell you, being very honest, that I've casually applied to some things and just oh, I'm just going to send my resume. I don't feel like doing the cover letter. But that's just because I wasn't very serious about that job, or I just kind of wanted to see maybe something would happen, or maybe it wouldn't. But as you can see in the sample cover letter here, they mention their NCE. After they talk about their VISTA service, they say, based on the unique hiring paths, from USAJOBS, I'm eligible for non-competitive eligibility as of this date. So the date that you're going to put in there is going to be your last day of service because that's when your NCE starts. Then you want to get to, the meat of the cover letter, which is why you're qualified for that position and why you'd be a good fit. As a VISTA, you do a lot of things, and hopefully you're keeping track of all those quantifiables, those numbers, how many volunteers you've recruited, how many grant funds you've raised, programs started, children served, all that stuff. That's what you're going to want to put in the cover letter, and make sure that it is applicable to the position that you're applying for. And then at the end of this, you can see it encloses my official VISTA verification of service letter. If you don't know what that is, you're going to receive that at the end of your service year. So once you're exited from service, on your left-hand side of your My AmeriCorps account, you'll see a tab that says Service Letters. That's where you're going to get your letter that is your VISTA verification of service letter that says, I served as a VISTA from this date to this date, and you'll also see your non-competitive eligibility letter there. Those 2 things will appear for you. Once you're exited from service, you'll have them available to you. And one more thing, another place that you can put your eligibility is on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is, a wonderful resource, and everyone's on LinkedIn these days. It's really, it's really great. You can put your NCE on your profile in your resume. So where you have your VISTA service listed, that's where you can say, once you're done with service, you can say, earned NCE for this position. Make sure that you spell out non-competitive eligibility and also do the acronym, because if someone is searching for resumes, maybe they're going to type NCE, maybe they'll type non-competitive eligibility, but you just want to make sure that you're appearing in as many search results as possible. And make yourself searchable to federal employers. That's an option on LinkedIn. I don't think you're automatically searchable on LinkedIn. You have to opt into that so that people can search for your resume if they're searching for those keywords. If someone is searching for AmeriCorps VISTA, NCE, that gives you more opportunities, to pop up. Make sure that you're adding AmeriCorps VISTA to your work experience, not just your site. Let's say that you're an AmeriCorps VISTA at Habitat for Humanity. Make sure that you put, that you are also a VISTA. It really pains us to see, oh, I worked at Habitat for Humanity as a volunteer coordinator with no mention of your VISTA service. And you can check out nationalservice.gov/alumni for examples of how to do that. And then, follow AmeriCorps VISTA for updates on career fairs, job announcements, tips, and more. I've got my service listed, I think, on my LinkedIn. You can check it out. Just find me, Calvin Landrum. I'm there, so you can see sort of how I've listed my service. I didn't do VISTA. I did another AmeriCorps, term of service, but you can see ways to sort of make your service, sound like a real job, because it is a real job.
It is. And just another plug, please follow us on LinkedIn. We put all kinds of great stuff up there, and you guys will hear about job announcements and career fairs and so forth. So please do that.
Yeah. So Liz, can you tell us about some places to explore, like, maybe during the job search?
Sure. So I know we just have another minute or so left, so I'm going to quickly run through this. So we already talked about the Campus Job Board. AmeriCorps Alums is another great resource that you all can take advantage of that also offers virtual career fairs and grad school fairs. So make sure to check them out. And then, like I mentioned before, Go Government and GovLoop are great resources if you're trying to get into the federal government, and then once you're in the federal government as well. They are super helpful. USAJOBS, we went through that, but really pay attention to those trainings that were down at the events. And then this also, hru.gov, this link also leads you to the trainings that are offered on the topics that you see there. So I highly recommend participating in those. All right, and then just a quick plug, there is an initiative called Employers of National Service. So these are companies and federal agencies, they're places from all different sectors, currently over 500 employers, including 25 federal agencies that have said that they value national service. So that includes Peace Corps and VISTA, all AmeriCorps programs. So you can check it out on nationalservice.gov or just Google Employers of National Service, and you can see the listings there. So if you're applying to any of those places, make sure that you tell them that you notice they are an employer of national service. All right, finally, just a quick wrap-up. These are some quick steps to do after today, in addition to following us on LinkedIn. Review your VAD for impressive and quantifiable data that you can put into your resume. Establish your USAJOBS profile. Start building your federal master resume from those great stats on your VAD. Then ask a professional contact to review your resume. So before you make it searchable or send it in for a job that you're applying to, make sure you show it to somebody, make sure there are no typos. I throw in the no pile any resume that has any typo in it. I just will not tolerate it, because that means it's an attention to detail thing, and if this document that is so important has a mistake in it, that's not a good sign. So really make sure that that has been scrubbed and is ready to show. And then finally, network and start following potentials on employers on social media. That's a great way for you to get to know them and to understand what they are up to. So I think that is all we have for you today.
Yeah, and we're about to get to questions, but before we do, I want to take a second to ask everyone to please fill out our evaluation of this webinar. We do a lot of work to get these together for you all and make them as informative as possible. So if there was anything here that you didn't see or anything that you really liked, please let us know. Also, you can give us suggestions for future sessions that you'd like to see us develop and make and present. So please just take a moment to fill out that evaluation. It means a lot to us, and we read every single comment and review and obsess over it and try to make it as good as possible. There's a lot of people also, just to hit on this, asking when will this be available on the VISTA campus, and it'll be available about a week from now along with the slides and any resources that we mentioned. You'll be able to find it again in about a week from now. So what we're going to do is take a moment and I will ask our operator, Kurt, to let us know how to ask questions via phone.
Thank you. We will now begin the question and answer session. If you'd like to ask a question, we'll need you to press *1. Make sure to unmute your phone and record your name clearly. I will require your name to introduce the question. If you need to withdraw your question, press *, then 2. Again, to ask a question, please press *, then 1. It may take a few moments for the questions to come through. Please stand by.
All right, thank you so much. All right, so to get started, let's see. We have some questions here. Let's see. One second. And sorry if I sound a little different. I had to run. My computer froze, so I ran over to Liz's desk. So everyone, please bear with us for a second. So let's see. We've got, let's see, Charles Hill says, I thought you guys were going to discuss how to create a federal resume in detail. Charles, we have a wonderful webinar called Translating Your Service to Your Resume. and career, and that is on the Vista campus, and that goes really, really into detail about how to create a federal resume, everything you should put in there. It's way more information than we could cover here on this webinar. All right, so I'm going to start just at the top and kind of work our way down. Let's see. Charm says, is there a calendar for upcoming networking events? I'm assuming travel to the DC event won't be covered, which makes it unrealistic for those of us currently serving. Is there a calendar we could plan accordingly to attend local events?
Yes, thank you for that question. So in an ideal world, we'd have a budget that would enable us to do this across the country at numerous times throughout the year, but alas, that is not the case. But there is, if you go to the Employers of National Service section of nationalservice.gov, under the NCE tab, you will see a listing of career fairs there along with registration links.
Great, thank you. So Carolyn says, does NCE start after you complete the 12 months if you extend your service by a few months?
That's an interesting question. Yeah, I guess in theory it would. It would start after your 12 months. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so, after your 12 months. That's a really good question. Carolyn, we'll write your name down and I'll be in touch with you with a solid answer on that. Let's see. Maria, I see your question here. Moving a bit ahead of the game, is being 55A eligible similar in status as NCE? I'm not sure that I know what 55A is.
I'm afraid I don't either. The federal government there's a lot of information to understand the federal hiring process, so that is not an area of expertise that we have, unfortunately.
Yeah, and Maria, if you are able to be a little bit more specific about that, you can send us an email to vistatrainingsupport@cns.gov, and we'll drop that in the chat. I'll ask Indy or Jess to put that email address in the chat. You can send questions to there for us to follow up on. But if you give us a little more information about 55A, we may be able to help you out with that. I really like this question from Aaron. Aaron said, if we get a temporary federal job during the summer and then go back to school, do I lose my NCE status since I used it for the temporary job, or does it last the entire time no matter what? And I think that's a good question because I've never thought of it as like, I have it, I use it, I lose it. No, you have it for the entire time that you have it.
Right. No, this is true. Sometimes, you might be hired on a temporary federal job during the summer, not even using your NCE too. So that is interesting.
Yeah. So let's see. Gina says, are we limited to applying to jobs listed under Peace Corps, AmeriCorps, or would we be eligible for jobs listed under the current federal employees category?
You can definitely look for jobs under the current. Well, no, I'm sorry, you cannot. No, you cannot do that.
No, you cannot.
The answer is no. You're not a current federal employee. But if they don't, and I've noticed a lot of employers don't specifically call out in those categories hiring Peace Corps and AmeriCorps, and that, again, comes down to the education thing. So if it's just a job that's open to the general public, you could, in your cover letter, let them know that you have NCE, and that might make a real difference.
Yeah. Let's see. Eric says, what if our educational GPA doesn't meet the standards? Is there wiggle room for consideration since we have NCE?
I don't think NCE trumps your GPA. However, a lot of times the education requirements are not that stringent. I mean, you'll even see government jobs that don't require a college education. So, and a lot of them don't even require the transcript. So just take a look at if a job specifically calls out that they are requiring a GPA of a certain level and you do not have that level, then do not waste your time and apply to that position.
Yeah. Someone says, Caitlin says, is it appropriate or necessary to follow up on a submission? And I'm assuming you're meaning a submission of like an application, and I can tell you that, from personal experience that you can follow up on that, but I wouldn't expect an answer back. Some positions are really popular and they get hundreds of applications. They can't respond to every person saying, hey, I submitted an application a month ago, I haven't heard back. Can you tell me what's up with that? Federal hiring can take a long time. So sometimes you can submit an application and you don't hear back for 2 or 3 months, and then all of a sudden they're like, hey, you're in the final round and we want to talk to you right now. Can you talk to us tomorrow? And then you're hired by the next week. I mean, it just depends, but I wouldn't count on it being a quick process. So that's why we do recommend to start looking for those federal jobs if you're interested about 2 to 3 months before the end of your service.
I'll also add, that's another reason why LinkedIn is a great tool for this. Do a search and see if you know anybody or knows anybody that works at that particular agency, and they might be able to put in a good word for you.
I like this. Cynthia says, it took 7 months for the Census Bureau to get back to me.
Yeah.
Yikes, that's really long.
Yeah.
Oh, also someone says that the USAJOBS resume webinar is awesome. OPM does it, and agreed. I think we've recommended that to members also. So if you go to OPM's website, I think you can search for like resume maybe or webinar. They have like a whole page of all the things.
Well, they're on the events down at the bottom of the USAJOBS homepage.
Let's see. Whitney, if we're applying before our VISTA year is over, we wouldn't have our verification letter yet. Will this be a problem?
So that's why you just tell them that you would have NCE as of whatever date your completed service. And if they need some sort of proof, you can still give them your currently serving letter and then just state to them when you will have NCE.
Yeah, totally. And I think, again, it's important to remember that it is, I mean, it's really on you to demonstrate the value, you know, of yourself as an employee, to advocate for yourself on behalf of getting any sort of eligibility/wiggle room that you can with your NCE status. You know, if you don't have it yet, you can say, hey, I've taken this commitment to serve, you know, a year of service. This is showing that I'm dedicated, you know, and I fulfill my commitments. If you can please wait 2 months for me to have this position, you know, I will be as dedicated to this job as I am, you know, in my service. You know, like, there's ways that you can spin that and say, like, this is only making me a better employee, a better candidate for this position. Let's see, what do you do about experience requirement and volunteering if the employer refused to count the volunteer experience because you are not paid?
Well,
that's not a person I want to work for.
Yeah, that unfortunately is their loss, and there's not really much you can do about that.
Yeah. Let's see, I put my position title on my resume, not AmeriCorps Vista, so I should be including this is an AmeriCorps Vista position?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, if I'm hiring for somebody and I see AmeriCorps Vista on there, that's going to mean something to me. And so you absolutely, I mean, even if your agency didn't, where you were located as a Vista didn't give you a title that included that, just add it. So let's say you were communications coordinator. You can put AmeriCorps Vista / communications coordinator, so you get it in there. Obviously, you want to give credit to your agency. You want to make sure that it's clear that you worked for Habitat for Humanity or whatever the sponsor was. But there's a way to get in both bits of information into your resume.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. Sorry, I'm trying to go through. Oh, I should check on the phone. Do we have any questions on the phone?
Currently, there's still no questions on the phone. Again, it's star then 1 on your touch-tone phone to ask a question.
Wonderful. Let's see. What do we have here? Oh, I saw a few questions about just like federal resumes in general. Someone said, which is a good question, said, how do I create a federal resume if I'm not a federal employee? So when we're talking about a federal resume, all that we're talking about is a resume that you build in USAJOBS. Now this is going to be a little different than like, you know, your standard 1 to 2 page resume that you may just like have on deck to take to a job fair. A federal resume is going to be more extensive, more inclusive of everything that you've done. It's not uncommon for, you know, federal resumes to be, you know, 5, 6, 7 pages because it's every position that you've had. It's a detail of everything that you've done in that job, from the most minute, you know, to the biggest projects that you've done. And that's going to help you because you know, when you're on USAJOBS and if they're searching through resumes, every keyword that you have, anything that they're searching for, if you can say that, yes, I've done that, no matter how big or small, that's you know, that's like a ding on your resume. That's like someone saying, oh, this one will pop up, you know, for this. So that's essentially what we're saying. You don't have to be a federal employee to create a federal resume. I would suggest going to USAJOBS, using their resume builder. It'll guide you through the entire process, and make sure that you're just as detailed as possible. Kind of forget those things you hear about, oh, keep it down to 4 bullets and like 1 page. No, like really go for it, brag on yourself, and expand.
Yeah, you still want to be succinct though, so just make sure you're highlighting good information.
Yeah, definitely. So is there any benefit to being related to a federal employee? I don't think so. Let's see, one more time. If I'm serving 2 years as a VISTA, does my NCE begin at the end of my 2nd year?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So, I mean, technically, if you do 2 years, you technically have NCE for your 2nd year of service because you've earned it from your 1st year. At the end of your 2nd year, then you get one for that year also. So then it's like, while you have that NCE from your 1st year, you're currently serving as a VISTA member, and then you get it again, you know, at the end of that 2nd year.
Actually, there was a good comment. If being related to a federal employee means that you're related, you are the spouse of a military person, that is a benefit. And when I showed you those hiring paths at the very beginning on USAJOBS homepage, there is a section for military spouses. So that would be the one exception. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. Is there a direct link to the article on how to create a federal resume?
You can just Google how to create a federal resume, but actually, I mean, the websites that I mentioned, Go Government, and so it's gogovernment.org and GovLoop, they both have examples on federal resumes, but I would go to Go Government first.
Yeah. Does the NCE apply to Department of State and Defense as well?
Any federal agency.
There we go. Is there a chance to discuss alternative benefits during the interview process, or are all benefits set in stone? That's a good question, and I think it's just going to depend on who you're interviewing with. I think for a lot of federal positions, the benefits are the benefits that you get because they're already pretty good benefits, and I don't think there's a lot of wiggle room for a lot of them. I think in the private sector, there's probably a little more wiggle room and chance for you to negotiate, but as far as like federal employment goes, I think like what they have listed is about all you're going to get. The government
if you're going to negotiate anything, negotiate your salary, but you really, the benefits are pretty set.
Yeah, totally. What federal agencies tend to need researchers? The science ones.
Well, yeah.
Well, actually, all of them.
A lot of them.
I mean, all of them.
Yeah.
We need researchers.
Yeah, we have a research and evaluation department, so that's pretty across the board.
Yeah, it just depends on what kind of research you're trying to do. We have people researching policy, researching budgets, researching the impacts of our programs, researching
volunteer trends,
all kinds of stuff. Have we covered who to contact for an extension, for example, returning to school?
Okay, so I said earlier, there is no entity that manages NCE. There's nobody you contact for an extension that is outside of the federal agency for which you are applying. So it's totally up to the person that you're interviewing with, the federal agency that you're working with, to decide if they extend your NCE.
Yeah. Edward says, when you say put your NCE status on your profile with LinkedIn, do you mean putting it in your headline?
You would put it in, there's a space at the top for you to sort of put your overall, like what you're looking for, and so it would be in that category that shows up at the top.
I see it. So we got Gail here, Gail is thinking ahead. If you renew your VISTA assignment, so I guess if you do a 2nd year, and you see a great federal job posting, can you apply then and include your VISTA service letter from your 1st year, or must you wait until your 2nd employment is complete? So, Gail, yes, you could apply technically during your 2nd year with your NCE status. I can't tell you that, yes, you can do that because I have to tell you that you have to complete a full year of service, and that's the only way to get that 2nd year of NCE and get your additional, any education or benefit that you'd be entitled to. But on a very technical level, yes, Gail, you could do what you said. I'm going to go back to the phone one more time and see if we have anyone on the phone.
Currently, still no questions on the audio portion.
All right, thank you so much. So we've got about 12 minutes left on this webinar that we're going to be here answering questions. If at this point, if you did not ask a question or if you just want to hang out and listen, please, you can disconnect, but we're going to be here for the next 12 minutes making our way through these questions. So stick with us if you'd like to. Denise says, can we find federal jobs for U.S. residents, green card holder?
again, that would be in the category of who may apply. When you look at positions in USAJOBS, you need to pay attention to who may apply, and it will give you the answer to that.
Yeah. Whitney says, we're applying before our VISTA year is over. We wouldn't have our verification letter yet. Will this be a problem? Again, this is where your advocation of yourself comes in, and you say, hey, I'm finishing a year of service. I will have this letter. Here's a letter that says that I am currently serving and that I will finish on this date. For, I think, most people, that would be sufficient. If you get any pushback on that, fight them. Let's see. Oh, there was a question. Is NCE a benefit for only federal jobs, or is it like state and local jobs also?
It's only federal. It applies to only federal. I also saw an email. Somebody was asking to repeat the networking events because they were doing the poll at the time. So really just paying attention to and try to attend any networking events possible. So you can find things on Meetup. You can attend career fairs. You can also, like I said, go to GovLoop, and they have virtual events listed there.
Yeah. Someone said, so I just saw your chat, but I also saw your question in here. It said, you know, how do we talk about our experience in NCE once our NCE is over? How do we, you know, sort of leverage our service and talk about it, you know, after, like, once we don't have NCE anymore? And I think that's a really good skill to have, regardless of having
Sure.
NCE.
So actually, we recently redid the alumni resource section. If you go to nationalservice.gov/alumni, and there's a whole section on communicating your service experience. There's some great examples in there on how you can talk about your service experience. People are also asking about LinkedIn, following LinkedIn recommendations. You need to follow AmeriCorps Vista. You can also follow Peace Corps, but that way, if you follow us on LinkedIn, you'll see job announcements, you'll get notifications about career fair opportunities and career tips, all kinds of good stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. Sorry. Oh, so to follow up, Elizabeth says, that's not what I'm asking. I'm wondering if the state job would find that impressive or noteworthy to leverage. I think that's in regards to NCE or maybe your VISTA service, and I think so. I mean,
sure. I mean, they're going to find your national service experience valuable. But the non-competitive eligibility status, that particular hiring path is with the federal government, not with state or local governments. But by all means, I mean, a lot of city governments even have VISTAs working in their mayor's offices. So by all means, you should feel free to leverage your experience with state and local governments.
For sure. Caroline, if I extend my service by a month or two, does my exit from service count as 12 months is done, or does NCE begin when I physically exit the door? So it's going to begin at the end of your 12 months.
Yeah. I mean, when you exit service, they change your in the portal.
I'm very sorry, I was incorrect. Thanks, Liz, for that correction. Your NCE status begins once you are fully done with your service year. So be that 12 months, or if you extend for 2 months, it begins at the end of that 2 months. Once we exit you from service, like completely, that's when you have access to that service letter that says, I served from this time to this time, so I served for 14 months, I have NCE. That's when that's going to be released to you, and that's when you're able to use it. Might be. Let's see.
Lots of good questions, though. You guys,
Kara, I have many years of work experience and probably would not need to use the years of education to show qualification. Do you recommend uploading a transcript anyway, even though I'm not trying to qualify based on education?
Only upload a transcript if they ask for it. Otherwise, you do not need to include it.
Yeah. Let's see. Can you repeat the answer about networking events? I think
you did that.
Okay. Let's see. We did that one. My VISTA year ends in August, and I will have a year until my future wife and I go to South Korea. Is it possible to get an extension after my 1 year in South Korea?
So it really depends on what you're doing in South Korea. If you're working for an NGO or doing something, you know, if you're working or even if you're just volunteering, when you return back to the U.S., if you've done something that is helping you gain skills that are applicable to the job that you're applying for. It doesn't really matter where you've been gaining those skills. So it really depends on what you're doing. It can't just be traveling around and having a cultural experience, unfortunately.
Michelle says, how much clout does prior federal experience and VISTA carry? And that's an interesting question. I think it's a lot.
Well, federal experience, if you worked for the government before and then have had a break in service, it's pretty easy to come, not easy, but you're in a good position to come back to the federal government. So if you have both NCE and you've worked for the federal government before, you really, that's a good position to be in.
Yeah.
You mentioned you were going to discuss. I think there was a link. Jessica, can you put in the chat again the links to the National Background Investigations Bureau? It's also on the VISTA campus. If you go to the VISTA campus job board, there's a hiring event taking place on March 15th in Atlanta, Georgia, but you can also submit your resume virtually. They're hiring for multiple positions throughout the country, so the instructions and everything that you need are on the VISTA campus job board.
Totally, and that was for you, Tevin Williams. That was your question. So Whitney says, so jobs that are open now, can I let them know that I won't be available until my service year is over in September, or do these jobs usually have start dates?
They do, yeah. September is a little, even though it takes a while, that's pretty far off. I would recommend maybe really zeroing in your search perhaps more in June or so.
Yeah.
You can continue to do your research and familiarize yourself with agencies and positions that are of interest to you and do safe searches on your profile in USAJOBS, but it's a little, people would want you to start sooner than September if you're applying now.
Yeah. Helen, I like this question. Helen Lund says, if NCE is not something that's managed by an entity and some employers might not be even aware of it, how can we ensure that the verification letter is legitimate or enough proof? Well, I can guarantee you that it is legitimate because we're providing it.
It has actual, and I didn't include it because it would be boring to you all, but there is language that says what the executive order is that is associated with non-competitive eligibility, and there's a paragraph in the verification of VISTA service letter that has all that, so an HR person could reference it, and then they would understand this is completely legitimate.
Yeah, I mean, and the information is out there to prove that NCE is a thing, and also a resource that you all have, if someone is questioning your service experience or ever questions your service letter, you can give them the number to the VMSU and they can call them and they can verify that yes, this person was a member. If they need someone, from AmeriCorps, from VISTA to verify that, they can also call the National Service Hotline and and get that verified if they need to. But
that's also why it's so great that on the USAJOBS homepage under the hiring paths, AmeriCorps VISTA is listed as one. So it's kind of hard to argue with that as well.
Totally. Let's see.
Somebody asked if they can use their NCE to apply for federal jobs abroad. Absolutely.
Totally. Let's see, having veteran status also, does AmeriCorps place me at a higher tier when it comes to NCE?
Veteran status is probably even more valuable than NCE, but if you have both, you're golden.
Yeah, totally. Mia says, would you include NCE on all resumes, regardless of federal or recognized NCE?
I wouldn't, because if you're just applying to a nonprofit or a corporation, it doesn't mean anything to them, so I would not include it.
Totally. Alan, Alan Coffey, I remember you from PSO. Alan says, I have not looked for a job since 1995. I had a career that ended in 2016 and began VISTA in 2017. Got any special advice for me? Are you looking for another job? Are you looking to retire after your VISTA service? I mean, it's up to you. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think there is definitely a place for you in the federal government. I think that I don't know what you were doing during that time frame, but again, if you were doing any kind of volunteer work or anything like that, then that is often well, actually, it says you were just looking for a job. I think definitely things have changed since 1995. It's so much easier to apply for a job because of the internet. So it really can be your friend, and there are just so many great resources out there. If you really are serious about federal employment, I really would encourage you going to gogovernment.org, and there are really explicit instructions
to helping people apply to the federal government and participating in the webinars that we've been talking about that are also listed on the bottom of the homepage of USAJOBS. So I wouldn't let that intimidate you, even though I can see how it might, but you got just as good of a chance. Just go ahead and let the internet be your friend on this one.
Yeah, and I would think, also, just like a bit of practical advice, I think, would be to, have a really good and solid answer for why, why your job ended, why you decided to do VISTA afterwards. I think it's really compelling if you can, tell that story of, I was attracted to national service. I wanted to serve after having a career, for this time. I was able to take the time off and go do this for my community. Those things, they sound really good to people who are hiring and are looking at your resume. And oftentimes, nonprofits, if that's the route you want to go, are looking for people with experience and very specialized experience, in doing.
But networking is going to be really key for you. If you don't have a LinkedIn profile, I highly suggest you go ahead and build one, and then you can start connecting to people, and you may be surprised who you know in different places that can really, start having informational interviews, and it can really be a great tool in a job search.
For sure. Let's see. Oh, so we are just about at time. I'm sorry, there was just a few questions left. I will answer Lillian's because I had it queued up. Are there any jobs that can be done from home or by working remotely? The answer is for sure there are. If you go to USAJOBS, you can search for jobs that are just remote positions. That's one of the advanced search criteria is just remote positions, so you can click that and find that. I think I've applied to a job that was working remotely from home and then just going different places. So yeah, take a look there. So that being said, we are done with the Q&A, and we're just about done with this webinar. Thanks, everyone, so much for joining us today. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you, Calvin. Thanks, everybody, for taking time out for this. We really appreciate it, and we really appreciate everything you're doing every day to make America better.
For sure. So if you go to the Vista campus and take a look at the webinars page, you can see a list of our upcoming webinars. We do hope that you join us again. Be checking out your email for, invites to our next things. We've got so much stuff on there. If you have any remaining questions, you can send them to vistatrainingsupport@cns.gov. I think we'll post that in the chat one last time. I think that's about it. Good luck out there. Please let us know what you need. We're here for you, here to support you always. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.